Hello and welcome to our new series of webcasts, which we will do every month, Sustainability Watch. Today, we want to spend time on material assessment and a novel approach that Maersk has developed. I think this is very exciting, but we would also to invite you to sign up for the whole series of webcasts, and I promise you we will have interesting themes throughout the year. But more about that later. First of all, a few points on housekeeping. Um, First of all, if you want to ask questions, on the bottom left of your screen, you have the possibility to type your question, and we will respond to it either whilst we're going along with the webcast or at the end of the session, whatever is most appropriate regarding your question. Feel free to download the presentation, which is in the box next to the question and answer box. And you can use the full screen mode so that you can see the slides better. That is on top of the slide, you see 4 arrows pointing outwards. If you click on them, you will be in full screen mode for the presentation. And if you click back inwards again, then you will also see the rest of the screen. I recommend that if you feel that some of the text is not large enough for you to see. I would really like to urge you to spend 1 minute at the end of the webcast and fill in the very quick questionnaire on feedback on the webcast. That helps us to improve the service for you. This program is also available on demand, but of course, then no interaction is possible anymore. But if your colleagues are interested, you can always refer to the download. For some of our audience, it will be interesting to know that you can earn CPE credits. For that, throughout the meeting, there will be a prompt popping up, and you just have to reply to that until the end of the meeting, and then you will earn these credits. So much for introduction and the proceedings. Now I would like to introduce to you our presenters of today. First of all, I'm very pleased to welcome Lena Björn Serpa. She's the head of organizational engagement and reporting. She is engaged in organizational engagement, trend spotting, reporting on sustainability in AP Møller-Maersk. She has been with Maersk for 8 years and has more than 20 years of experience working in the CSR and corporate sustainability field. Lene holds a Master of Science in International Business Administration and Modern Language from the Copenhagen Business School. Welcome, Lene.
Thank you.
Looking forward to your presentation. I would also like to introduce Anu Sausch. For our more regular users. You already know him quite well, but let me introduce them for all of you. He's our senior sustainability researcher in the Conference Board, Sustainability Center. He started his career as an environmental consultant focusing on strategy, innovation, and compliance, and then transitioned into corporate sustainability roles. Prior to the Conference Board, he was at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He has attended the Sustainability Leadership Program at the University of Cambridge and holds a master's degree in environmental policy from the London School of Economics. Welcome, Anu.
Thank you. Hello to everyone.
I'm your host, Uwe Schulte. I'm the head of the of the Global Sustainability Center of the Conference Board. And let me just very briefly introduce to you what we're up to in the Sustainability Center. We support our member companies to create long-term value and create positive impact through sustainability integration into their business and into their business strategy. We do this with timely and thought-provoking and relevant research. That is our aim, and you are our judge. We're guided by the UN Sustainable Development Goals and, of course, responsible standards and frameworks as the UN Global Compact, for example. We find it important to be fact-based and independent so you can rely on the input you're getting from the center. If you have more questions about the center, feel free to contact me and we're happy to provide you with more information. Now let's get to our theme of today. A lot of you have engaged in material assessment in one shape or form in the past, and we have done some research around that, and here to talk about the results of that is Anu. Over to you, Anu.
Thank you. So very briefly, some high-level information about the study we undertook. Our primary objective was to understand how companies viewed and approached materiality. Our primary means to gather this information was through the survey, which I'm going to talk about. But we also complemented the survey information we gathered through the survey by following up with some discussions with some of the companies who responded to the survey. So we had around 50 responses to the survey. So that's the sample size, which I'll be referring to when I go through the results. But as you can see, the range of industries varied from manufacturing, financial insurance, so pretty wide spread representation. And in terms of the companies who responded in terms of the headquarters, we had a 50% split between Europe and North America. To give you an idea of the size, the companies, most of the companies had a turnover between 10 to 40 billion dollars, but we also had a small group, around 6 to 8 companies, which were around 60 to 80 billion mark. So a large company base. What I would do in the slides, which I'll take you through now, is talk about some of the factual data which we received, but also take a pause to get you to reflect on what does that mean for you, because I feel that will be valuable for you. So in terms of the first question, we wanted to understand whether companies undertake materiality or not. And of the 50 companies who responded to the survey, 48 undertook a materiality assessment. The 2 companies who didn't undertake a materiality assessment, which they said they haven't actually undertaken one until now because they felt there was no business need. So just nice observation to look at that. But going back to the companies who undertook a materiality assessment, we wanted to understand what was the purpose, why did they undertake materiality, and of course how often they did it. What did it take them, what did it cost, and so forth. So first thing first, the companies who undertook materiality assessment, they said they were majority of them, around 35 said they were doing this annually, and the purpose of doing the materiality assessment was to include the information in the annual report with the view to show that they have a process to engage their stakeholders. I think that this is a very interesting trend or observation we have is when you look at the essence of materiality is to understand what's important in relation to ESG, if you're looking at the GRI definition, and what's important to your stakeholders. And then you try to act upon this information. You try to incorporate this information to inform your business strategy or your sustainability strategy. But what we found that the companies, although are undertaking materiality, the purpose for them to undertake materiality is slightly different. It's actually shifted to become an exercise as a proxy for stakeholder engagement. So very important, transition of what is the intent, but what in practice actually most of the companies are doing. Some other things around what it takes companies to do materiality. So most of the companies who are doing it annually spend in the region of $20,000 to $30,000 to do this exercise. They tend to do this themselves in-house, but then tend to partner with external agencies, especially in relation to undertaking interviews with special groups. So of course, when you look at the stakeholder maps, you can go from internal to external. You have a long list. But what was interesting that companies told us that they try to prioritize on 3 stakeholder groups: employees, clients, and investors. So that's what came through in the survey and the discussions we had. That it's very, very important to engage these 3 groups. Of course, the other groups, other stakeholders are important, but not so much in a way. That's kind of a relative thing. So moving on, what companies also said that they pretty much rely or follow the process of GRI with a view to undertake their materiality assessment. So simply following the process as guided by GRI. And what we see over here is they typically tend to use a 2x2 matrix, and I have got some examples to go through in a minute. But I would like now amongst the audience, I'm sure there will be some practitioners who are accountable for undertaking materiality. I guess my question for you at some point, which I would like to reflect, I would like you to reflect upon is, what's the purpose, if you undertake a materiality assessment, what's the purpose of undertaking materiality? How do you use the information you gather to good use? How do you inform how do you inform your business strategy? How do you inform yourselves to make your business better as a result of the exercise you have undertaken? So that's a question for you to reflect upon in your free time, I would say. So very briefly, I have got a few examples of what companies shared with us. And as you can see, the 2x2 grid, which is on the left, is deemed to be the most important and popular way of how companies tend to communicate. And of course, there are some other approaches as well. But in the principle, it's a similar approach where you have something going on the x-axis in terms of the importance, and or y-axis in terms of what's the impact on the business. So that's what companies tend to use. That's the majority of companies tend to use. Most of the companies.
I know. Let me just point out again that if you feel, because I have problems reading the text, and if you want to see it, there is the 4 arrows on the top that you could increase the size of the slide if you want to do that. And let me take that opportunity also to tell you one more time that you have the possibility to ask questions on the bottom left and just type them in, and we will take them as we go along. Sorry for interrupting, Anna.
It's all right. So yes, so this is about how the ways companies are reporting their materiality, the output of the materiality assessment which they have undertaken. Well, actually, this brings me on to one of the trends we started to see. So I mentioned most of the companies, a significant majority, tend to do this every year. But we also got information about some of the companies who have started to undertake materiality assessment or align their materiality process along with their strategy review process. So about a handful of companies, which was very encouraging, said that they have moved away from the annual exercise and try to do it every 3 to 5 years, which aligns with typically when they are trying to refresh their strategy. And they've actually started using this process in a much more meaningful, effective manner. They're trying to look at the information, consider the information as a view to inform their strategy. So that's a trend which we saw, which is coming through, and I feel that's the encouraging bit. But the same side, we have to be real that only a handful of companies are doing so. So now, of course, companies also mentioned with the onset of things like integrated reporting, SASP, TCFD, what they're saying is there's renewed focus on trying to address material issues. And I guess this is what the question which I'm going to leave you with is: we know for sure that materiality would be a core aspect of the sustainability lexicon going forward. Now we will have 2 sets of companies, and I'm trying to simplify. Some companies would continue to use materiality as a means, as a proxy for stakeholder engagement. And of course, some companies will start to question the purpose of undertaking the whole exercise and trying to use the information which comes out of materiality with a view to inform and drive business strategy. So I guess for practitioners, that's the options you can have. It's a simple option of doing something which is ticking the boxes, but also doing something which ticks the box, but then you're much more able to use the information, put the information to good use. And I'm pleased that we'll be able to hear from Lenny shortly, because I'm sure you will find the journey, what they have been through, quite interesting. Thank you, Uwe.
Thank you, Anu. I would like to ask you already a question. Um, when you look at the impressive sort of representation of 50 very large companies, how many would you say have engaged more in the direction of strategy already?
So if I was to simply respond to your question, it's around 5. So a very small number.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting. That leads us, as you've already said, Anu, to hear from the journey that Maersk has been through, and I would encourage Lena now to share with us her experience in evaluating materiality from AP Møller Maersk.
Thank you very much, Uwe, and thank you so much for inviting me to talk about our materiality approach. This is really going to be very exciting for us. I think also to have this opportunity to discuss and also get some feedback from participants on this call who may also be inspired by what we have done, I hope. What I'm going to talk to you about is, first of all, I will say that I think it's the research that Anu just presented. It sounds very, very familiar to me. It is very much also the same picture that we found when we started working with our new approach to materiality. Some of the same shortcomings that we've tried to address with the new approach. What you can see here on the slide is we're talking about materiality as risk, responsibility, and shared value. So I'll talk to you about those 3 dimensions, what goes into the way we analyze sustainability issues in those 3 dimensions. And also ending up with some thoughts on some challenges also that we still face, and some areas where we certainly see an opportunity to improve our approach. But just very, very briefly, a little bit about Maersk, for those of you who may not know us already. So we are a global company in transportation and logistics. We have also been on a journey not only in developing our materiality approach, but certainly also in developing and changing our strategy and our business strategy and structure over the last few years, moving from being a conglomerate within both energy and transport to now becoming an integrated transportation and logistics provider with an ambition to connect and simplify our customers' value chains. We are present in over 130 countries across still differing business areas, which also means that I also want to underline that when I talk about what we've done on materiality here, we work on this approach is done on a global scale. And there is, of course, a difference when you look at what is material to Maersk globally. If you compare that to what is material at the from the perspective, say, of one of our terminals, one of our container terminals in a specific community and geographical area. So the perspective here is global. Right. So if we start out, I think also very much similar to the picture that Anu was showing before. When we started working with materiality, it was for sustainability reporting, particularly in Maersk. And in 2012, we started working with a tool which helped us to professionalize our approach at that time was a little bit ad hoc, and we did want to have a more systematic approach. So we developed at that time a tool which was an Excel-based analysis, which helped us in a systematic way to assess issues and completely also in line with the standard matrix methodology. Here we assess the issues on different dimensions of how important were they to A.P. Møller-Maersk and how important are they to our stakeholders. And we did that for several years, so as you can see here from 2012 to 2015, and each year continuing to do the assessment, which fed into our report. But what we found over the years was that it became more and more of this tick box exercise. And it didn't add enough value. And fundamentally, it was not really linking into our strategy processes. So we were trying to assess the issues here within a time frame of more or less 5 years, for example. So when we assessed issues that look at what could be the implication to our revenue, what could be the implications to cost over a 5-year scale, that was not any kind of ideal format for assessing whether an issue could be a long-term opportunity for Maersk to work with. So we were beginning to see this divide on the one hand between materiality, which became this kind of, a reporting exercise, and on the other hand, we also found that within even this reporting exercise, within the framework of the tool and the assessments of issues for materiality, we found that the outcome was a little bit too rigid. So as an example, you'll see here on this slide, personal safety it has its own little dot color. We gave it an orange color because when we took the issue of personal safety, which is a highly material one for Maersk, unfortunately we still have challenges in our business around injuries and fatalities. But when we take that through this systematic process in the underlying Excel tool, which looked at the financial impact to Maersk as well as the what would be the impact in terms of our values, for example, how important was this to different stakeholder groups, it ended up a little bit somewhere in the middle, because these various dimensions averaged themselves out somewhat. And of course, when we were looking then at this picture, and especially when our management looked at this resulting image with safety not being at the very top and the absolute highest priority issue, they said, well, this cannot be, this is, regardless of how it ends up in a financial impact assessment, this issue is just critically important to us from a responsibility perspective. So again, that was another example of how we could just begin to see that this way of analyzing the issues and plotting them into a 2x2 matrix didn't capture the different ways in which issues could be important to us. So instead, what we came up with, and again, I guess here would be a good time to suggest to people to look at the slides in full screen or download, because it can be difficult, I think, to read the text. But the approach that we then developed during 2016 was one where we kind of took the dimensions of the matrix apart. And we decided that instead of having a separate tool to use for materiality assessment, we would actually use existing analysis or frameworks as the way to do our overall materiality assessment. So instead of having this combined matrix, we actually can see that material or sustainability issues can be material to Maersk, either as a risk, and when I say risk in this context, I mean a risk to our business. Primarily, a financial impact is the area where we have most developed methodology for assessing it at the moment. But issues can also be, as I mentioned before with the example with safety, issues can also be responsibilities to us. And finally, there can be particular issues which have the potential to be shared value, as we say, potential. So issues where we can really make a major difference through our business at scale to contribute to solving a global societal challenge, and in the same way provide value to our business. So this process was one, and I'll go through some of the underlying analysis for these dimensions in a minute. But this was one where, as I said, we took the dimensions apart, and we then said we're not going to try and combine them in any, in a matrix form. For example, again, we will insist that the issues are different, and in that way also the analysis helps to guide us to actually also tell us not only what issues we should be reporting on, but also how we should actually be managing these issues. So it provides more guidance to us, this approach, in that way.
Lene, can I just briefly interrupt? Sorry for it. Is really, really interesting and forward-looking. These three dimensions, did they sort of spring on you, and is this the only way you could look at it? What made you split it this way?
Well, the reason we decided to split into these three dimensions was one, you could say perhaps the responsibility dimension is maybe the most classic sustainability dimension, right? That's the one we as sustainability CSR professionals are most used to, at least traditionally, exploring and analyzing. Then in 2012, I believe it was, we had the UN guiding principles coming out on business and human rights. And that, of course, has been a framework that has added some more stringency to the way that companies can assess their responsibility for issues. And the shared value approach was one that has also gained more traction in recent years. We started working with that approach to sustainability strategy in around 2012 from 2012 onwards, 2013. And it became a foundation for our sustainability strategy, which we launched in 2014. So, and finally, you could say the risk perspective has also was not sprung upon us, you could say, but was also inspired by the increasing focus from investor side, which we were beginning to see also at that time some years ago. That when investors look at sustainability, they're particularly interested in how are issues going to impact the business, the company. That's an important angle for them to assess. And the traditional way of doing materiality is not necessarily going to capture that within the framework of the matrix. So by taking them apart and by doing these separate analysis, we're also capturing both on the responsibility side, you could say the expectation of stakeholders such as NGOs that perhaps more in the traditional space, as I mentioned, but on the risk side, also particularly the expectations of investors. And of course, on the shared value side, importantly, having a stronger link to our business strategy as well.
So one should hope that the investors are looking at your greenfield, the shared value dimension
Yes.
more than just the risk.
I agree. I think I would certainly hope so as well. But I think, and I'd be very interested to hear what participants on the call have to say about that as well. But I think my impression is that from the investor side, the main focus is likely still on risk. The very most forward-looking will certainly also be looking at opportunity to create long-term value, though. Okay, but I just want to also point out a few shortcomings or challenges also with this approach, and I can certainly also come back to, as I said, some of the ways we see opportunity to improve the approach going forward. But just very offhand, it's also clear that this approach is more complex than the matrix, and whereas the old approach that we had the advantage of being this very nice Excel tool, which is difficult to argue with. You know, when you have nice little algorithms going into the calculations, and then you have an output. Here, there is more of some subjectivity also in determining how issues are material, especially on the responsibility side. That's something that we're hoping to improve, but I think it's important also to be clear that that can also be a challenge to work with. Another point to highlight is also that this is, given that it is more complex and it relies on some more stringent underlying analysis, that's an advantage, I would say, but it can also be a challenge in terms of perhaps not allowing as much room as the traditional matrix or traditional way of assessing materiality would do in terms of engagement, because a quite typical way that companies would also go about constructing a standard matrix would also be, for example, in the form of a workshop. You know, getting people together around a table for maybe a management team or getting other stakeholder groups involved. It's a very useful way for building engagement. But as I said, it does not then allow room for very substantial analysis. And perhaps there is a way of combining the methods in a better way going forward, also for us.
Nina, we just have a question coming in. It's not quite on exactly here, but I think it's still worth briefly mentioning. If a company is to review and refresh its historical materiality assessment, where one should start to ensure a complete refresh?
Well, so I guess I can talk a little bit about how we did it, because when and this slide shows where we started on the risk assessment, right? Because I think perhaps our situation is also similar to what would be the case for many other companies at this time. So what we did at that time was we had a long list of issues, which was actually our current materiality assessment at that time. So this would be around 2015, and also in addition to that, a longer list of issues that we were looking at from, let's say, a trend spotting research perspective. But they all fed in, so we had it was not like we started on a blank slate. We already had a pretty good understanding of many of our issues. But what we then did to understand how these issues could actually constitute risks to our business, we used a standard enterprise risk management methodology, to assess all the issues. And I think one, I'm not going to go into all the details here on the various parts of the steps, but I think just one really important thing to point out is that there is a clear difference, a distinction between just talking about sustainability issues as issues and talking about them as risks, because you need to understand the details much more to actually go into an issue and to say, we may be talking about things like supply chain management as an issue, but what is actually the risk that we're talking about here? So that was the process that we went through, and we categorized, as you can see here on the slide, the risks in terms of whether they were short term or longer term, and have approached the longer term issues or longer term risks in a different way than we have with the shorter term risks. But as I said, so this is completely standard enterprise risk management methodology. The very useful, the benefit of that, I would say as well, is also that that the outcome, we could then feed that directly into our corporate enterprise risk management process. And as you can see here, this is the results that we ended up with just at a very overall level. We built this sustainability risk register with around 20-30 issues that we had taken through this assessment. And an interesting finding was, of course, not surprisingly, that very few of the issues that we were analyzing were actually important enough, you could say, from a financial impact perspective, that they were all the way there in that red space, which you could say then meant that they were material enough to go into our corporate risk management process. But the implication of that is, of course, not then that means that we should not be managing the issues because they're not financially material enough for the company, because they may still constitute a responsibility or an opportunity. But so just going back to the question, I think that's a place to start then, is to begin to analyze based on the current knowledge of sustainability issues, how do they constitute risks to the business. The other dimension that we then used to assess all the issues was responsibility. And there, as I said, we used our due diligence process, looking at based on the guiding principles methodology as a core way of assessing our responsibility for sustainability issues, and some of the headlines are mentioned here on this slide. So this is assessing issues in terms of severity, in terms of likelihood, in order to be able to prioritize them. And then it's also evaluating current mitigation actions or efforts, as well as how we are connected to the issues. Again, building directly on the UN Guiding Principles way of assessing responsibility, corporate responsibility for human rights impacts. But what we also added to that was also a view on building on our corporate values, as well as taking into account stakeholder expectations. So here, elements like the Sustainable Development Goals were also feeding into our views on issues. And that's why, as I started out by mentioning, that the responsibility dimension is actually the one that remains still for us somewhat subjective. We do have different elements that we're pulling into this analysis because it is one where sometimes it can be very difficult to find just one bottom line, right? We're taking various dimensions into account, various stakeholder groups, various as I said, perspectives from our own corporate values to UN guiding principles. But nevertheless, it was a way also for us of, again, taking our work on human rights and due diligence and integrating it directly into our materiality process. So using the work that we were doing there and applying it directly also into how we were viewing the materiality of issues for reporting and importantly also for our strategy. So this is where we are today. This is the latest materiality assessment from our 2018 report. We have gone through a number of updates since 2016, but we have not. Again, I think I can certainly recognize the point Anu was making from the broader research that we don't do a full update every year of all of these dimensions. But we have each year we have done you could say a little bit of a validation of the materiality assessment. And one of the new elements that came in this year, for example, on the risk side, is the physical impacts of climate change, because that is clearly an area that has moved more to the core, more to the center of attention for investors as well as for ourselves, being involved with the TCFD, for example, and also beginning to look into analysis of how climate change is going to impact our assets in the future. And we talk more in our report about that. The one area that I haven't yet talked so much about how we actually go about analyzing is on the shared value side. So I can just talk a little bit about that. The reason I don't have one simple slide of our underlying analysis for this is that this is actually based, I would say, on much more customized and much more granular assessments of the potential business value as well as the societal value for each of these areas. So this has been an ingrained part of our process in doing strategy work for our sustainability strategy, both the strategy that we launched in 2014 and a strategy update that we did in 2017. But the basic, the starting point for these analyses is the question that is also highlighted here on this slide, is that we start out by asking ourselves, where are there significant global systemic challenges in the world which actually link to our business in such a way that we, through our business, are able to contribute with solutions to societal challenges in such a way that it also creates opportunities and benefits to our business. And some of the analysis that have then helped us to assess the potential business value of this over the years, some of the levers that we have used have been, for example, pilot projects on the ground, which have helped us to really test and validate our approaches, also in terms of saying, is this something that is scalable? And we've also worked since around 2010 with impact studies, socioeconomic impact studies that have given us insight into the societal value of Maersk's work, for example, in making trade more efficient. So these kinds of insights we've been able to bring into our analysis, our strategic analysis of these issues. Food loss is an example of an area. Our ambition here is a new one that came into our strategy in 2017, where we added it as a new potential area for us to create shared value by working to reduce food loss in the transportation chain. And so this is an area that has come more to the fore, I would say, in societal debates through the Sustainable Development Goals, which has a specific target also on reducing food loss. And at the same time, it's an area where our business can actually really contribute. We have technologies to, for example, refrigerated containers, and have, as part of our business strategy, also a focus on investing in cold chain infrastructure, for example. So again, there's this very strong link between the potential to create societal value and the potential to create business value with working on this area. Good. And finally, just very quickly, so this is what's then reflected in our strategy. As you can see here, the 4 shared value projects are our main focus area, our global priorities. But the underlying commitment to responsible business practices, which includes managing both responsibilities and/or risks and mitigating negative impacts, is a part of that. So materiality is in this way a reflection of our strategy, and our strategy is a reflection of our materiality assessment. Finally, very quickly, this is of course, so it's an ongoing process, the materiality assessment. As I say, we do use our reporting process as a, let's say, a regular kind of a check-in point for us to reflect on our materiality assessment every year. But we also do ongoing trend spotting for new issues. And some of the new issues that we are assessing in that regard are some of the things that are mentioned here on the slide, which are not yet considered material enough to go into our overall materiality assessment. But they may grow in importance and relevance over the next years and feature more strongly in our materiality assessment for future years, very likely. And finally, under next steps, I would just highlight some of the key areas where we see an opportunity to improve our methodology and our approach. So one is on the risk side, where we would really like to see if we can find ways to improve how we assess reputational risk. So as I mentioned, the methodology we use is very much built on enterprise risk management and looking particularly at the financial impact. But many sustainability issues, of course, will have an impact on the reputational side. And I think that's an area where we can improve to be more stringent in how we actually assess how much we are able to mitigate reputational risk through a strong and solid management of sustainability issues. The other area is that we would like to further work on how we can incorporate, let's say, also a stronger, more solid methodology for capturing absolute impacts, or applying a benchmark, perhaps more correctly, to societal impacts on the On the environmental side, it is today possible to do science-based assessments, for example, that will help to actually say, are we actually taking enough responsibility? Are we mitigating enough risk? That's still quite difficult on some social issues, I would say. But that's an area where we want to continue to work in the future. And that, I think, is about it for me. So I think, so just again to highlight, there's more information in our sustainability report for this year, as well as from the last couple of years as well, where we've gone into more detail about the new materiality approach.
Thank you so much, Lena. This was extremely interesting, and I would encourage our audience to, even if they don't have a question, to say how they feel about this approach and whether that is adding a new perspective to their own work. I must say, summarizing what I heard you say is that suddenly moving away from the matrix and splitting it into three parts, for me, most important link to strategy is not that the other parts aren't important as well, but the most important one is the shared value one, where it's clearly reflected then in your overall strategy. And I think a lot of companies in the past have struggled to make sure that sustainability is integrated into the business strategy, and excuse the pun, in a material way. And I think you're leading ahead here. What I would like to ask you in this context is, what triggered this? I mean, you said something about it, but what was the main trigger to move away from the matrix and to go into this direction?
Well, I think that the two main points, as I also point out, one is as I said, we could clearly see, especially as it became very, very clear in 2014, we launched a sustainability strategy, which was about creating shared value and unlocking growth for our business by focusing on enabling trade, by reducing CO2 emissions, working on climate change. And that at that time, a third area was on education, because that was really an important focus point for our energy-related businesses. But then, so when we had this strategy, and on the other hand, we had the results of our materiality assessment, we could see that the two just didn't connect very well, and materiality was giving a potentially different picture than what had come out of our strategy process. And that really triggered a lot of thought about, but this can't really be, because why are we having a process then which is basically only used for reporting, and you know, it should actually help to inform us. The materiality process should help to inform us also for our strategy, and it should help to inform us on how we should be managing the issues. So that was really an important piece. And the other one, as I mentioned, was that even within the system, the materiality system in itself, we were also finding it difficult to really see the outcomes as useful enough, right? Because the end result in the matrix tended all to jumble towards the middle anyway, because the Excel sheets were taking you through different analysis of across different dimensions, but then in the end giving you an average. So then again, we were just finding that it was not adding enough value.
Understood. Anu, I would like to. You've heard what Lena just explained and her journey. When you compare that with our survey results, what would you say? What is the reason most of the companies haven't made that step yet, that Maersk has very clearly taken?
I guess I'll have to tread a very fine line. I feel the individuals who are doing the work might have aspirations to inform or use the information to inform the strategy. But on a day-to-day basis, as individuals start doing a lot of other things, this is limited to, the materiality assessment is limited to being an annual exercise, and they're just not able to break that cycle. But the other factor to consider is, of course, assessment agencies often ask, do you undertake a materiality assessment or do you engage with your stakeholders? And yes, the answer for that is yes. And that's and companies use their materiality process or the output as a means to show that. So I guess from an external perspective, the questions which are being asked by external rating agencies are not the right question, and it drives a behavior or at least a lock-in where companies continue to just carrying on an annual basis without actually reflecting on what's the real purpose of what we are doing.
Thank you, Anu. I see some questions are coming in besides some praise for you, Lena, saying that you've given Corey Edmonds food for thought to reconsider their process. The question is from Veronica Vachon. Do you include consultation with affected stakeholders when identifying material issues?
Yeah, so we do that in various ways. We do not have a sort of a full-on type of stakeholder survey that I know some other companies may engage in. Again, we don't find that to be quite valuable enough. But we do have stakeholder consultations on selected issues, for example, with roundtables. We would also have regular consultations with some of our key stakeholders here, for example, that we're close to here in Denmark. And of course, then what we very much do is also, as part of the analysis of, for example, responsibility issues, and as part of the analysis of the due diligence that we do, there we will then also reach out to the stakeholders that are involved, either directly or we would work through our issue owners around the organization, who are of course regularly in touch with stakeholders on the issues that they're working with.
Thank you. Actually, the questions are flooding in now, so I'm afraid we will not be able to answer everything now because we're running out of time. But still, let's get engaged in the discussions. We will pass on all the questions to Lena, and we will reply to your questions. So please forgive us if we have to close down very soon. One question is about, has this spawned the new materiality analysis spawned projects in R&D, and have you come up with new solutions? For example, the example was given in ballast water.
So the materiality approach in itself would not then spawn new solutions, but what it does do is, again, if you look at the underlying dimensions and look particularly on the strategic side, the shared value side, that's where you will see that we have launched new commitments, particularly also on the climate change side last year, right, with our new ambition towards 2050 for carbon neutral shipping.
Yeah, Karin Huberheim, she says it also shows how important it is to include sustainability departments, managers, people into the strategy departments to contribute with outcomes and intertwined trends, issues, stakeholder expectations with business strategy development.
I completely agree.
Okay, then was this structured within Maersk from the beginning? The new approach.
Sorry, was it structured?
From the beginning within Maersk. Did you all on your own come up with that? I guess that's the way I understand the question.
Yes. So this was very much from our own team that started working with it. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Lene. Thank you, Anu. This was, I think, a very interesting journey to observe and engage. And as some of the participants have expressed here, lots of foods for thought. Keep the questions coming. Send them to me or to Lene, and we will strive to answer your questions. This webcast is also for download, so spread the good news to your colleagues. And I would like to mention again, this is a series of webcasts every third Thursday in the month. And the next upcoming webcasts are how can companies support SDGs and take business opportunities out of the SDGs. And we will also then talk a month later about responsible digital. What is this? How can you make a start in this field? We will have interesting speakers, and we hope you will sign up for the whole series in one go. Please, before we finish, do the webcast evaluation. It helps us to improve our service for you. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.